evening. Let me do an audio check here. Audio check 1 2 1 2. Audio is good. The stream seems a little funky today. Hopefully there's no interruptions just from the overlay. Seems like there's a few issues, but we are going to move forward. Since this is a pretty simple stream, I don't see why there should be any further issues. And hopefully nothing will go wrong. So let's get reading. As described in the description, this is a leftist read-along. Feel free to follow the links in the description. This is for my personal education as well as commitment to reading these articles for this whole year. And I'm reading them for people to listen to if they don't have the time. So you can listen to it at work or on your commute if you're not free to read it. Also, feel free to comment if you have any thoughts or analysis that you'd like to contribute. I will make sure to read them as long as they are productive and not just badgering or bad faith comments. Okay, so let's get going today. Since we left off on reading 1010 articles, let's see what came after. So November 8th, November 9th, November 13th, 15th, and 15th. So we have about, why should we reject? All right, so we have about four articles to read, starting with November 13th. Let's see here. Video still looks good. Nothing's dropping. I'll make sure to check because I'm a little concerned now because it was giving me some issues. All right. So, first article. Titled, Floridians voted to restore abortion rights. Why did the amendment fail? Article by Harper Cummings, November 13th, 2024. And the photo is of protesters rallying for abortion rights in Florida. Article reads as follows. On election night, despite receiving 57% of the vote, a ballot measure which would have restored abortion rights for Floridians failed. As a consequence, millions of Floridians will continue to suffer under the 6-week abortion ban, a deadly policy that effectively makes abortion access out of reach for most women and others who require access to reproductive care. Most Floridians do not want to live under this policy, but because of the undemocratic nature of our current system, all Floridians do. Under Florida law, ballot measures require 60% of the total vote to pass. In 2006, this supermajority rule was instituted explicitly in order to make it more difficult for Florida voters to make changes to their constitution, an obstacle to democratic control that state Republicans have even been trying to heighten in recent years by raising the threshold to 66.67%. It is also the highest threshold an abortion initiative has faced since the overturning of Roe v. Wade by the unelected Supreme Court in 2022. Before this election cycle, every state abortion initiative that was brought to a vote had succeeded, whether those states were majority Republican or Democrat, demonstrating that abortion rights are popular across all lines of division. In fact, even though an amendment failed in Florida, it still received more votes than either of the two-party candidates, beating support for Vice President Harris's presidential bid by 14 points. However, sensing the overwhelming popular support for abortion rights in Florida, as well as the consistent success in both, quote, blue, end quote, and, quote, red, end quote, states of similar campaigns, the ruling class employed highly undemocratic tactics to undermine the people's voice on this issue. The Florida governor and his allies falsely accused organizers of submitting forged petition signatures, sent police to the homes of voters who had signed the petition, used state funds to spread misinformation about the amendment on television and radio, and threatened TV stations that aired pro-amendment ads with criminal penalties. When voters finally went to cast their ballots, they were met with a legally dubious and highly misleading quote, financial impact statement, end quote, claiming that restoring abortion access could lead to serious costs for the state. This despite the fact that since abortion was previously legal up to 24 weeks in Florida, the financial impact of legal abortions is actually very well understood. Working people understand these tactics for what they are: voter suppression and manipulation by the ruling class. It is important to remember that the right-wing forces in Florida would never have had this opportunity to undermine the public will if the Democratic Party had followed through on its decades-long promise to protect abortion access. The failure of the Democratic Party to provide federal protection to abortion access while continuing year after year to court votes and donations by paying lip service to women's rights make them complicit in this outcome. Under our current system, our rights are never secure, even when they are popularly supported, and the consequences of losing them are catastrophic for working people. Undemocratic voting rules, aggressive voter suppression, and open contempt for the popular will are neither new nor special. They are the way the capitalist state is designed to function. Working people need to respond to this in the only way that has ever worked: by getting organized, fighting back, and demanding a system that is based on the people's will and needs. All right. So a light article, very informative on what's happening in Florida. Uh, by the standards that the Floridian legislative or politicians set on voting initiatives, neither Trump nor Harris should be president of Florida, because neither one of them reached the over 60% or the wanted over 66.67% threshold. Uh, so we can see how this is a double speak, how this is hypocrisy, how this is a rug pull on democracy, how the state itself, the rulers that call themselves politicians, the oligarchs of the state, actually oppress and suppress the will of the people there. Abortion is popular across the table for conservatives and liberals because it is a woman's choice, it is a personal choice, it is a choice about health that can be an emergency, it can prevent deaths, and it can prevent unhealthy outcomes for women. So of course women support it in the majority, and you should just support it. If your worry is about oh, you're killing babies, or oh, it's against the will of God or whatever, then that is your prerogative, that is your thought, but you should not put that on other people, or oppress that or push that on other people that aren't of your religion. And even if they are of your religion, if you think God is going to judge them, then cut the prejudice and just let them be, and let God judge them if you want them to judge them. That is just my thoughts on it. I see no reason to tell women how they should treat their bodies. A big supporter of the autonomy of the people. Uh, if they want to get tattoos, uh, even if I don't like tattoos, or say if I don't like a certain style of tattoo, it's really none of my business. If people think that they want to cosplay dress all the time, or they want to dress like furries all the time, it's really none of my business. If people have different personal sexual preferences, different sexual preferences than what you consider the norm, it's none of your business. It's none of my business. Let people be. The important issues are always the ones that we don't really talk about enough, which is the working class. Are you making enough money? Do you have living wages? Are people having housing? Should housing be a human right? I think so. Should education be a human right? Of course. Should food be a human right? Of course. Should universal health care be a human right? Of course. These are just normal things that are the minimal standard that everyone should have in a modern society with so many resources and so much excess. Okay, so those are my quick opinions on this. I'm not going to carry on, but this is just to show what the ruling class, not just the Republicans, but the Democrats as well, kind of the ways that they oppress the vote, the ways that they maneuver to gaslight people into thinking that they live in a democracy, which they do not. Cool. Let's move along. This one should be a heavy one. No, okay, maybe not. All right, let me check on the audio again, make sure that the stream is working. Stream looks good. Audio test 1 2 1 2. Audio sounds good. Alrighty, so next article. Who is this orange monster? Just another monster. Just another wing to the same bird. Just another side to the same old rusty coin. Some people just really know how to buff out a good old coin. All right. So, article title, Who's Who in the New Trump Administration? Article by Liberation Staff, November 15th, 2024, less than a minute. Photo is of Donald Trump at an Arizona for Trump rally in August 2024. Article reads as follows. The Trump program is nothing short of a declaration of war against the working class. Meet the appointees in his administration. He's chosen to lead it. Quote, government efficiency, end quote. Meet the billionaires Trump put in charge of his work on, let me start that over. Meet the billionaires Trump put in charge for the war on the working class. Let's see if I can read this like a newsy article. Meet the billionaires Trump put in charge of his war on the working class. Trump named Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to lead a new, quote, Department of Government Efficiency, end quote, despite promising on the campaign trail to stand up for workers. Trump has now deputized these two billionaires to wage war on every public program that benefits the working class. What is the, quote, Department of Government Efficiency, end quote? Trump wants to create the Department of Government Efficiency as a tool to carry out mass layoffs of public sector workers and slash social programs that help people survive. The goal is to carry out $2 trillion worth of cuts. Musk and Ramaswamy pretend like they will be able to do this just by ending wasteful and inefficient practices, but there's no way such a huge amount of money, about 1/3 of the entire budget of the government, can be cut without firing huge numbers of public sector workers. Many federal workers are union members, and this would be a historic assault on the labor movement, and crucial programs like food stamps, WIC, public housing, and workplace safety enforcement could be cut or eliminated entirely. As part of this, right-wing politicians are pushing to get rid of a 1974 law that would stop Trump from withholding money allocated by Congress to programs that he doesn't like. Who are Musk and Ramaswamy? Elon Musk is the richest person in the world with a net worth of over $300 billion. He bills himself as a genius engineer, but he has never invented anything on his own in his life. He was born into a rich family during the apartheid regime in South Africa and, quote, built, end quote, companies by getting huge government subsidies and busting unions. Musk spent almost $200 million helping Trump get elected, including with an illegal scheme to directly pay prospective voters in swing states. Vivek Ramaswamy is a billionaire CEO in the pharmaceutical industry, notorious for dirty tricks like his false claim to have developed a groundbreaking Alzheimer's medication. He then created a public profile for himself as a far-right commentator. He ran for president in the Republican primary, but then dropped out and endorsed Trump. A government of, by, and for billionaires. Trump said he was fighting for, quote, the forgotten man and woman, end quote, Now that he's back in power, he's given the richest person on the planet and his big pharma sidekick a blank check to destroy workers' lives. And they're not the only billionaires who get to step in and directly run the government. The official co-leaders of the Trump transition team are banker Howard Lutnick and former WWE CEO Linda McMahon. Trump hasn't announced who his Treasury Secretary will be yet, but all the people reportedly under consideration are ultra-rich bankers. How to really make the government, quote, efficient, unquote, end war on the police state. End war and the police state. The federal government does waste a lot of money. It wastes it on war and locking people up. The US government spends over 1 trillion every year on war. That includes the Pentagon's budget, the nuclear weapons budget that's hidden in the Department of Energy, Veterans Affairs, and the interest paid on debt from past war spending. The FBI, DEA, ATF, and US Marshals combined with US attorney offices across the country, plus the Bureau of Prisons, eats up roughly $30 billion a year managing the system of mass incarceration. But Trump, Musk, and Ramaswamy are fine with that. The only things they think are wasteful are programs that help people survive. It doesn't have to be this way, though. We can have a government that puts meeting the needs of the people first. But to do that, we have to overthrow the dictatorship of the billionaires. Immigration. Meet the leader of Trump's war on immigrants. Trump wants to blame all the problems we experience under this capitalist system, inflation, homelessness, crime, unemployment, on immigrants. Now he's announced who he's putting in charge of a police state roundup of millions of undocumented people. Thomas Homan, quote, border czar, end quote, the head of ICE during Trump's first term, pledged at the Republican National Convention that he would, quote, run the biggest deportation operation this country's ever seen, end quote, promised to, quote, flood sanctuary cities, end quote, with agents to conduct mass arrests and carry out massive raids targeting workplaces, was given the, quote, President Rank Award, end quote, by Barack Obama in 2015 for his work in, quote, enforcement and removal operations, end quote. Barack Obama did that, folks. Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, overseeing deportations. The architect of the cruelest anti-immigrant policies of the first Trump administration, like family separation, a key bridge between the Trump administration and the, quote, alt-right, end quote, fascist movement. Supporters deploying military units of the National Guard to hunt down undocumented people. Advocates the construction of massive camps to detain immigrants round up in raids. Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, Governor of South Dakota, who's known for her total loyalty to Trump, claimed the, quote, United States of America is in a time of invasion, end quote, as a consequence of immigrants, quote, waging war against our nation, end quote. Supported the Muslim ban during Trump's first term because it would restrict refugees from, quote, terrorist hotbed areas, end quote. A socialist program can defeat the far right's anti-immigrant agenda, end the sanctions and wars that force people to flee their countries. Working class solidarity instead of race to the bottom. Don't let the rich pit us against each other. Immigrants and US-born workers just stand together to take back the wealth that our labor created but was stolen by the billionaires. Legal status for all undocumented people and deportation and police state raids. Yeah, so this is a great summary and flyer setup on what we as socialists should be sharing with other comrades, other working class people, so that they understand what we're getting into these next few years. It's really just a different face, an uglier face to a systemic problem that is ongoing. The Democrats do this stuff as well. They just make it look prettier. They just know how to really put the lipstick on the pig. You know what I mean? Um, but the, the Republicans just do it straight out. They just straight out tell you, yeah, we want to deport everybody. Yeah, we want to put more people in prison. Yeah, we want to take away more rights. And we're going to do it to lower the deficit. Who cares? Who cares about the silly deficit? It's nonsense. Study some MMT, monetary theory, and you understand that it's all just a big clown show. These people print money by the billions every year to send abroad and to enrich themselves, and then they tell us we have to cut down on programs for poor people. Get out of here. Just shut down the whole Pentagon, and we'll have trillions for everybody. Uh, don't forget that most states, half of their budgets go to the police. Half, at least half. The same with our government. Most of our spending, almost 50%, goes into military. So don't tell me we can't just cut the military down by 10%. Or, I mean, as the Claudia de la Cruz program said, I believe it was Claudia's, that they want to cut down the military by 90%. It might have been Claudia, it might have been Jill Stein, either PSL or the Green Party, or both. But both were in agreement in that issue that we needed to cut down military spending majorly. It was unnecessary for us to have 800 military bases around the world. That is not called defending democracy. That is called an invasion. That is called a worldwide colonization, imperialist system. All right. So I suggest people share this. I suggest people share this link. People that they think might want to read it. All right. We're going to move on here. Let me check audio one more time. Audio test 1 2 1 2. Audio is good. Okay. Next article reads titled Why We Should All Reject Mass Deportations and Demand Real Solutions to Our Problems. By Liberation Staff, November 15th, 2024. Article reads as follows. Why do immigrants come to the United States? People do not make the decision to leave their homes lightly. Most immigrants leave their countries because of extreme poverty or violence, hardships caused by the same corporations and politicians that are responsible for so many injustices here. Take NAFTA, the North American Trade Agreement, infamous for destroying blue-collar jobs in the United States. NAFTA was also devastating for Mexican farmers. One provision of NAFTA opened the door for agricultural corporations to buy up huge amounts of land, leaving people in the countryside without the means to survive. Many of them were then forced to move to the US in search of work. The US government uses its power to control the lives of people in this country and all around the world, where there are governments that won't follow US orders. Washington imposes sanctions that cut the country off from trading with the rest of the world, or even intervenes militarily. In Venezuela, for example, Obama and Trump put sanctions that suffocated the economy and destroyed the country's oil industry. Haiti, too, has been the target of repeated invasions and military occupations, carried out directly or indirectly by the Pentagon. As a result, large numbers of Venezuelans and Haitians have no choice but to leave their home to find a safe place to live and work. 4 reasons we should all oppose mass deportations. Immigrants contribute to society and the economy. Billionaires like Trump and Elon Musk want us to believe immigrants are dangerous criminals, but that's a lie. All scientific research shows that immigrants are far less likely to commit violent crimes than non-immigrants. Immigrant workers want the exact same thing that workers born here want: the ability to provide a decent life for themselves and their families. And immigrants are a key part of our economy. Without immigrants, key industries would break down. Immigrants also pay sales tax and often income tax, unlike the super rich. The working class is stronger when we stand together. The real reason why working people born here or abroad experience so much hardship is that the wealth we create goes to a tiny handful of ultra rich people and the corporations they own. If we want that to change, we have to stand together. Falsely believing that immigrants are the cause of rising prices, scarce employment opportunities, and worsening conditions on the job only harms our ability to fight the real source of our problems together. Let me read that again. Falsely believing that immigrants are the cause of rising prices, scarce employment opportunities, and worsening conditions on the job only harm our ability to fight the real source of our problems together. Mass deportations are a huge waste of public money. The American Immigration Council estimates that the cost of deporting approximately 1 million immigrants in a single year amounts to $88 billion. There are approximately 13 million undocumented people living in the United States. With that same amount of money, we could end homelessness and hunger in America and replace all the lead pipes in water systems. Or we could construct 2.9 million homes. Or we could cover the tuition of 8.9 million college students. It's a massive waste of to rip apart families and communities, pretending that that's the source of our problems, that to fund real, then to fund real solutions. I think that one speaks to the people a lot more. Why mass deportations are a huge waste of public money, because it shows the blatant hypocrisy of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party that support mass deportations. First, it came for immigrants. Who's next? Trump wants to send tens of thousands of heavily armed cops into communities across the country to carry out military-style raids that round up millions of people and send them off to camps. If he can get away with unleashing a reign of terror like this against immigrants, why would he stop there? Any number of groups would be labeled, quote, the enemy within, end quote, and be subject to the same treatment. Union organizers, people opposing war and genocide, communities standing up against police violence, anyone who gets in the way of Trump and his billionaire partners could be next. How can we make sure everyone has a decent job and an affordable home? Trump and the people in his administration tell us that the reason it's so hard to find a good job or an affordable home is that immigrant workers have taken them. These are purely lies designed to let the real guilty parties off the hook. Good jobs disappeared from so many communities because corporate executives decided to close factories and other workplaces, or replace workers with computers and machines. Many jobs that used to pay a living wage can no longer sustain a family because of union busting and inflation. There are about 16 million vacant homes in the United States. There is no, quote, housing shortage, end quote. The reality is that landlords and banks are raising rents and home prices because they can, and big investment firms are buying up housing units with the intention of turning around and selling them for more money in the future. The PSL solution is to seize the 100 largest corporations in America and turn them into public property. This would include the big banks and property management corporations that own millions of vacant housing units, which could be given to people who need them. That would be coupled with a new law prohibiting landlords from charging more than 10% of a person's income for rent. With the money and resources from these corporations, we could create 20 million jobs through massive programs to strengthen infrastructure, build public transportation, and improve housing. All right. So, the hashtags here are government, immigration, racism, and U.S. working class. There's a downloadable pamphlet for this. Uh, yeah, this is important. Let's go over the force real quickly. Immigrants contribute to society and the economy. That's right. If you want to really go the capitalist route on this, to advocate for an let's say, an amnesty for immigrants. It's that we need them because they buy products and they pay for taxes, and they don't even get to claim back taxes at the end of the year. But they do contribute to the economy. An economy in a working class situation, society where people are no longer creating population growth because people don't want to have kids. So yeah, you actually need immigrants. I believe this is also one reason why a new form of amnesty is coming, whether people like it or not. Or Trump's other route is going to be to expand prison labor using immigrants as free labor for the corporations to be profitable, which is totally disgusting. But I think that is kind of like the deal people are making with the devil now in the oligarchs. Um, Mass deportations are a huge waste of public money. There is no way they are ever going to deport more than 10 million people without putting a huge strain on the budget. Let's see here. Millions of immigrants in a single year amount to, 1 million immigrants in a single year would amount to about $88 billion. So we're talking about trillions of dollars to deport everybody, right? And then who's going to buy your groceries? Then who's going to do the jobs you don't want to do? Good luck with that. It's unrealistic. I think Trump is just speaking to his base of people that are emotionally looking for a scapegoat, and it's not going to happen. I'm actually very interested in see what's going to happen in the next few years, but I don't think mass deportation is going to be the thing. I think they're just going to uh, over budget administrations like ICE, just so that other people could get richer. But it's not going to be much of a deportation, at least not that much more different than his deportation structure when he won back in 2016. The beauty is that we already know what he did in 2016, and as leftists, as organizers, we should be better prepared to protect and to defend our migrant working class. Let's see. And yes, like I said earlier, the cost is a huge hypocrisy where these these ruling class in the government are trying to say they're trying to save money and cut budgets. So they're going to cut lunches to school children instead of cutting billions of dollars towards sending bombs to Israel or Ukraine. Come on, let's get real. Uh, Literally, one bomb costs millions of dollars, at least hundreds of thousands of dollars for a bomb, like a bunker buster, or whatever you want to call it. Let's be real. A bomb, any kind of 1 ton, 2 ton bomb, costs in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. These high tech bombs are not cheap. These fighter jets cost in the millions of dollars. These tanks, these armored vehicles, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We are wasting so much money on militarizing the world unnecessarily, just so that a bunch of military executives can get richer and fatter. Huge hypocrisy. Yeah. So if they came from the immigrants and then they come from us, for us, so they're trying to militarize or create a stronger police state with the excuse that they're going to deport immigrants. But literally, what they're going to do next after that is going to be like, oh, well, we're already here. Let's round up all the activists. Let's round out up all the union workers. Let's prevent a union strike before it even starts by oppressing people. So that is what they're going to do with this plan. Uh, it's literally something that the Democrats don't even care about because they work for the same oligarchs. It's a plutocracy, kakistocracy, right? Where they are all just circling each other, giving each other money. It's such a round business for them, uh, where they are so corrupt that they really don't see the working class as much more than cattle or slave labor. Uh, and this is exactly where it's going to go. Uh, can it be preventable? Yes, but it's going to take mass mobilization by the working class. Uh, if mass mobilization is oppressed, it leads to revolution. So, which also leads to the failure of the economy. So, the capitalist will have to decide to either make a deal or see the crumbling of the empire crumbling over its on its own weight, buckling over its own weight. Okay, how can we make sure everyone has a decent job and affordable homes? As mentioned here, the PSL solution is to seize the 100 largest corporations in America and turn them into public property. Yeah, yeah, why not? Uh, Water shouldn't be for sale. It shouldn't be a brand for sale. Water should be a human right where everybody gets it. Everybody gets it, just pays taxes, and water is freely provided for everybody. Healthy, clean water. That's just an example of how it should be. So yes, seize Nestle or whatever corporations are trying to sell you water. Like, you know what? Get a real job, right? You want to tell some CEO wants to go around and tell people to get real jobs and work hard. No, you get a real job instead of trying to sell people water. You total ghouls. Uh, that's a horror of capitalism. It commodifies everything that it can commodify in order to make a profit. If they could, they would commodify air, which I think they will eventually. This is why they don't care about uh, polluting the ozone or polluting the atmosphere, because I think someday the air is going to be so toxic, they're going to make billions of dollars and trillions of dollars of selling us masks or oxygen tanks. It's ridiculous, but come on, they're selling us water. All right, so that's the end for this article. Uh, Not much to it. It was a light read. It was a solid read. All right, the stream seems like it's still working. This is great. I didn't have any issues. I just don't know why the system won't let me comment the way I want to comment, but it is what it is. I'm going to check the audio again one more time. Audio check 1 2 1 2. Audio is great. I'm flying through these today, eh? All right, I had a good day. I had a good day. I'm going to end this pretty soon and go watch some TV. I didn't think they'd give it that much. That they'd get so in depth about this article, but that's awesome. Let's see what it's all about this week. Again, if you can, follow the link. The description provides the link to liberationnews.org, so you can read these articles yourself, or you can support Liberation.org. All right, title reads as follows: Amsterdam Defense Against Racist Israeli Rampage Called Anti-Semitic, by Joyce Shediak, November 16th, 2024. And here are a bunch of pictures of a bunch of hooligans left Israel about to rip down Israelis about to rip down Palestinian flags from a property that is not their property. So they shouldn't even be there. But they're making the effort in this picture to have people kept to somebody's window to rip off their flag. On the right is Amsterdam residents demand their streets back. Collage by Joyce Shediak. All right. Article reads as follows. It was, quote, shocking, end quote, said government leaders throughout the Western world. On November 6th and 7th, there was a, quote, modern day pogrom, end quote, in the Netherlands, according to the Anti-Defamation League. Quote, Jews on the streets of Amsterdam were hunted, chased, attacked, and forced to hide from anti-Semitic mobs whose goal was to harm as many Jews as possible, end quote, said the group. At issue were attack on Israeli fans of the Maccabi Tel Aviv soccer team who had come from Israel to the Netherlands to watch their team play against the Dutch team Ajax. I think it's Ajax. reality is that the assaulters were the Israelis. The victims were the residents of Amsterdam. For 36 hours, visiting Maccabi Tel Aviv fans went on a violent and racist rampage in that city, insulting and assaulting Dutch people wearing or people they thought were Arab, breaking windows and trying to break into apartments, tearing down Palestinian flags displayed on private homes, and threatening to come back and kill the people who live there, and chanting, quote, "Death to Arabs," end quote, and, quote, "Why is school out in Gaza? There are no children left there," end quote. Those being called, quote, "anti-Semitic," end quote, are the Amsterdammers who took it on themselves to stop the racist riot and defend their communities after the police made no attempt to rein in the Maccabi marauders. Some 600 Amsterdam cops rushed around trying to protect the Maccabi thugs and arresting Dutch people who were protesting the Maccabi Tel Aviv fan riot or defending their community and themselves from them. Dutch and major Western policies lie. Dutch and major Western politicians lie. In a giant act of gaslighting, Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof called the self-defense put up by Amsterdam residents, quote, "terrible," end quote, and, quote, "horrific," end quote, anti-Semitic attacks, as did the mayor of Amsterdam and the King of Netherlands. Schoof heads the Netherlands government in coalition with the far-right Islamophobic and anti-immigrant PVV party, whose leader has called for a ban on Islamic schools, Qurans, and mosques. EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen was equally outraged, reminding all that, quote, "anti-Semitism has absolutely no place in Europe," end quote. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau found it, quote, "horrifying," end quote. Not to be outdone, Joe Biden condemned acts he claimed were, quote, "despicable and echo dark moments in history, and Jews were prosecuted," end quote. U.S. Congress members, including New York Senator Chuck Schumer, denounced the, quote, "pogrom," end quote. The situation was so dangerous, we were told that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had to send planes to pick up the soccer fans and bring them back to Israel where they would be safe. Media ignores death of Arabs chants. The Western establishment media ignored the chants of genocidal intent aimed at Amsterdam residents by the rioting Israeli fans that were captured on scores of videos, and instead delivered the politicians' line word for word to millions of people. ABC News said, quote, "anti-Semitic attacks," end quote, were, quote, "fueled by social media calls to attack Jews," end quote. The New York Times proclaimed, quote, "anti-Semitic attacks prompt emergency flight for Israeli soccer fans," end quote. The Wall Street Journal exclaimed, quote, "Israeli soccer fans attacked by mob," end quote. And Fox News claimed, quote, "Jews ambushed amid modern-day pogrom," end quote. The truth was that, quote, "the Dutch protest had nothing to do with anti-Semitism." Amsterdam resident Alexander van Stoken said it was against Israeli hooligans destroying the city, end quote. Amsterdam Center of Support for Palestine. Some 750,000 people live in Amsterdam. About 1% are Jewish and 13 to 15% Muslim, mostly first and second generation immigrants from North Africa. Even current Israeli soldiers perpetrating the genocide, but the city administration refused to cancel the game. Activists then planned a protest outside the stadium in support of Palestine and against the presence of the Israeli soccer team, but Amsterdam Mayor Fem Hasselma stopped it. Fem Hasselma stopped it, prohibiting all pro-Palestinian action near the stadium. Weird. By November 6, as many as 3,000 Maccabi Tel Aviv soccer fans had arrived in Amsterdam from Israel for the November 7th Europe Europa League soccer match. They were to be accompanied by Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency. According to the Jerusalem Post, they proceeded to rampage through the city for 2 days. Video footage posted on social media shows them tearing down Palestinian flags, displayed on private homes, and shouting, F, quote, fuck you, Palestine, end quote. Other chants in Amsterdam residents heard from the Maccabi fans included, quote, let the IDF win in FK and FK the Arabs, end quote. Why is school out in Gaza? Quote, why is school out in Gaza? There are no children left there, end quote. And, quote, deaf to Arabs, end quote. They threatened passersby wearing keffiyehs or bearing other symbols of support for Palestine with jeers, giving them the middle finger, spitting at them, and throwing beer at them. They physically attacked people they thought were Arab and spat at women in hijab. They vandalized a taxi and assaulted its driver. In one such incident on November 6, dozens of these thugs gathered in front of Via Mokum and a squatter building where several Palestinian flags were displayed. Videos showed them throwing stones at the windows, climbing the building, and ripping the flags off. Quote, they kicked our doors and tried to enter our house, end quote, a resident told the Amsterdam newspaper Het Parool. Quote, they raised their middle finger and made decapitation gestures, saying in English, we're going to kill you and we will come back, end quote. Video footage showed a police car passing, not stopping. Amsterdam resident Mokotesh told Al Jazeera that locals try to counter the violence started against them and their properties by the Israeli fans. The police tried to stop this response by Amsterdammers and ordered people wearing pro-Palestinian symbols or chanting slogans like, quote, Free Palestine, end quote, to leave areas where the thugs assembled. The Maccabi Tel Aviv fans rioted all the next day and night. During the soccer game on the evening of November 7th, they even interrupted with whistles a minute of a minute of silence for Valencia flood victims, as Spain's prime minister has urged countries to stop arming Israel. The Dutch news site Bender published videos of a larger group of Maccabi supporters arming themselves with sticks, pipes, and rocks after the game, which their team lost 5-0, heading towards the city center clearly looking for trouble. The people act after the police did not. Amsterdam residents grew understandably angry at these racist marauders celebrating genocide and accosting Dutch people in their hometown. After one of their own was beaten and his cab vandalized, and after the police did nothing, a group of angry Amsterdam cab drivers, who are mostly from the immigrant community, organized a confrontation Wednesday night to let the marauders know they couldn't do that again. Their online call for taxi drivers to go where the Israeli racists were gathering and threatening people was labeled a, quote, call for a Jew hunt, end quote, by mainstream politicians and media. When facing opposition, many of the Israelis racists ran away. A Maccabi Tel Aviv supporter was chased into the canal and forced to yell, quote, Free Palestine, end quote. Many hid in a casino. Police say they intervened in the streets several times to protect the Maccabi fans and escorted those hiding in the casino back to the safety of their hotel. Police protected the Maccabi hooligans. After 2 days of racist riots, it not surprising that Amsterdammers came out to confront the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans the night of November 7th. Many were youth of Moroccan descent. Those who confronted the thugs when the police wouldn't have been labeled quote, anti-Semitic hit squads, end quote. Once again, the police intervened to escort the racists to safety of their hotel, arresting anti-racists. Once again, the police intervened to escort the racists to safety of their hotel, arresting anti-racists. Footage of Israeli fans being escorted to the metro by police after the match showed them singing anti-Arab songs. Police said they arrested 62 people and 5 were taken to the hospital with light injuries and quickly released, showing there were no serious injuries. Amsterdam City Council member Jassi Valhuzian, offered a further clarification of police behavior to Al Jazeera. The police, he said, quote, acted only to protect the Maccabi hooligans when Amsterdammers stood up to defend their own people and defend their own houses. And this is when the police showed up to protect the Maccabi fans when they ran away after attacking people. End quote. Not anti-Jewish, but anti-hooligans destroying our city. As for the charge of indiscriminate attacks on Jewish people, even the Dutch police admit that those confronting the Maccabi Tel Aviv racists made a distinction between Jewish residents of Amsterdam and visiting fans, and that there were no attacks on Jewish residents of the city and no sign of attacks on Jewish synagogues. This was backed up by the Jewish Daily Forward, a Zionist paper, which noted that the violence targeted only the Israeli fans. Erev Rav, a Amsterdam-based anti-Zionist Jewish group, issued a statement strongly condemning the police handling of events. Quote, we are deeply concerned that instead of restraining the group who caused disturbances, the police allowed the situation to escalate into widespread street violence. It is troubling that arrests were selective, primarily targeting local Moroccan youth who confronted these groups, while Maccabi fans who initiated the provocation face no consequences. Global Jews for Palestine, a coalition of Jewish groups in 18 countries, condemned the Israeli attacks as, quote, unequivocally anti-Arab and anti-Palestinian racism in living color, end quote. The group also condemned, quote, the manipulation of the facts. The supporters of Israel and much of the media turned the narratives into one of pure anti-Semitism, calling it a pogrom, makes a mockery of those terms, end quote. Pogrom. Since the beginning of the U.S.-Israeli genocide in Gaza, the Western political establishment and its media have justified Israeli military actions, thereby placing an equal sign between support for Palestinian rights and anti-Semitism. Now, we see this falsehood providing a cover for Israeli arch racists to run amok in other people's countries. Defending rampaging Israeli racists causes government crisis. As of this writing, this has caused a crisis in the Dutch government, which may collapse after Geert Wilders of the PVV party called for the revoking of Dutch citizenship and the deportation of those involved in the defense against the Israeli fans. The PVV holds the most seats in the Dutch parliament. Amsterdam City Council, in contrast, sought to settle a very angry city with a motion passed by a vote of 35 of the 45 council members calling for immediate actions to address the, quote, real and imminent, quote, risk of genocide in Gaza. Amsterdam population remains defiant. Meanwhile, Amsterdam residents remain furious. They are taking to the streets every day in defiance of the demonstration ban and are withstanding mass arrests and police storming the crowds to take their Palestinian flags and beating them. Their message is clear, quote, free Palestine, end quote, and, quote, we want our streets back, end quote. That's right. So this is a clear example of what happens in capitalism when you no longer accept the propaganda that they feed you, when you no longer accept their social norm, which in this case, their social norm is to always victimize Israeli Zionists and call the defenders of their neighborhoods the aggressors. So since people aren't accepting this, then what does the state do? It uses its state force, it uses its aggression, its police, to create a police state that oppresses all dissent. So if you do not agree with what the government's saying, with the propaganda being fed down your throat, then they try to isolate you, arrest you, oppress you, take your rights away, and say that it's not freedom of speech. So they rewrite the definitions, they redraw the lines, just to try to oppress people. And what the people are doing, it's totally natural to go out in the streets and totally protest Zionism, the genocide, to protest the oppression of their personal rights, to free speech. In full support of solidarity with the people of Amsterdam that are saying Free Palestine. And yeah, that's what you get. You end up in the river screaming Free Palestine if you're going to be a total tool and go to somebody's home and try to rip down their flags and to totally disrespect their culture and their way of life. Personally, I don't think any Israeli team should play soccer anywhere in the world. For you to accept that team into your field is complicity with the violence, with the genocide, with the occupation, the apartheid that is happening in Palestine, in Gaza, in Lebanon. I mean, they didn't want the Russians to play in the Olympics, right? And that's nowhere near, I don't think, as horrible as what's happening in Gaza. Uh, there's a strategic war happening in Russia, uh, a proxy war, uh, really coordinated and started and triggered by U.S. and NATO policies. So there's a big difference. We're not going to get into that today because that's not what this article about. This article is about the ghoulishness of these Zionists that went there and totally decided that they could just rampage for 2 days, maybe because they're total sore losers and maybe because they're totally brainwashed to be total fascists, which is what they are. And yeah, they got handled accordingly by the people of Amsterdam. Get kicked the hell out. Uh, I think most people in Amsterdam were very kind and empathetic to them. Actually, they could have been a lot worse. You don't go to people's homes and fully disrespect them and not expect some kind of backlash. I'm surprised they got away with it 2 nights. I'm surprised they didn't get uh, uh, fully reacted to a full response that very night. With modern internet and communications, I'm just surprised that people just weren't out there that very first night kicking them all into the river and telling them to scream Free Palestine. But that's just me. Then again, we have to be empathetic to their ignorance and treat them like children. But I think it's justified. Uh, Defense is justified here. The people of Amsterdam definitely defended themselves from hooligans. Cool. And what's that word they use so much here? The hooligans protected the Maccabi hooligans. Yeah. So I believe that's it for today. We got through these pretty fast. Let me do a quick refresh here. Um, yeah, man, it's going to be a wild 4 years coming up here in the United States because if anything, liberals definitely love joining the leftist movements when there is a conservative in office, especially one as polarizing as Trump. Uh, so we welcome all people, liberals and conservatives, with a moral compass to join us to fight for human rights. I hope to see you all out in the streets, mobilizing. Don't forget, we must always educate, organize, and mobilize the working class for a better future. That is historically how gains have been won for the working class. Uh, and we must always use our moral compass as people, as good people, to do what is morally correct for humanity and not to just think in our own personal interest, because that is not how the world works. The world works in a community, in a system, uh, and we all have to be part of it, and we all have to make it better one way or another. All right. So that's it for today. Let's see here. Audio still good? Yep. Not much else to add. Uh, Hope everybody has a great night. Check out the description box. Don't forget to support liberationnews.org. And goodbye.